Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today for our May Train the Trainer, which is going to be a bit of a refresh for those of you that may have joined us in January. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, we're going to be talking through crowdfunding, how it can be really useful for the sports sector, and how you, as organisations, potentially NGBs, can be actually kind of signposting and supporting organisations and clubs within your sector to make the most of crowdfunding for not only their fundraising needs, but as a bit of a tool for some marketing and awareness. And we'll look at all of the wonderful things that crowdfunding can bring within this session as well. So before we get started, with all of the content, let's go through a little bit of housekeeping. We have allowed an hour for this session, and that does include a Q&A at the end as well. So please do use the chat box, which you should find in the toolbar along the bottom of your screen. Alternatively, could be sat at the top of your screen. But do make sure you use that chat box to type any questions that you have. You can also use that to introduce yourselves. It's really good to know who we've got in the room with us today, and we can tailor the session to your needs as well. So make sure you're introducing yourselves. Let us know what organisation you're joining us from, maybe your location, if you've got any experience in this kind of supporting of projects, if you're new to this as a concept, and we can make sure that we can maximise this session so you're getting the most out of it as possible. We are recording the session. If you do not wish to feature in the recording, by all means, you can pop your camera off. There'll be plenty of time where I will stop or pause the recording for us to have a bit of a chat and a bit of a catch up about what we're learning today as well. If you find you have any issues with your internet connection, the best thing to do is just exit the session and then follow the confirmation email with the join up link to be able to rejoin the room. You might find, although you've jumped back into the live room, that you might have lost any of the previous chats, for example, in the chat box. If that happens, by all means, pop a message in there and I can bring you back up to speed. Please keep your microphone on mute throughout the session, just to limit any background noise. And if you find that there's my video and maybe a column of different faces that are sat over the top of the slide content, please just use the view option to change it to side by side speaker view, and that should remove us from the content there. Okay. Fab. Right. So for the majority of you here in this session today, you'll have a good understanding of this. Again, if anybody has any questions, just please pop it in the chat or pop a hand up and I can kind of go through things specifically for your area if needs be. But in terms of the potential need for something like crowdfunding for a club or an organisation's kind of financial resilience, it can be really important for organisations to be thinking about diversifying their income streams. For lots of sectors at the moment, especially the sporting sector, quite often we're seeing that people who may have been reliant on certain grants that they might have received year in, year out, maybe those are much more competitive these days, or maybe actually that funding pot has dried up and they're no longer able to apply for that grant that they might have done over recent years. So they're thinking about ways in which they can actually bring in funding to their organisation. Crowdfunding can play a really kind of crucial part in that, because not only does it give them ownership of their fundraising and they can utilize the platform in many different ways, it can also give them access to match funding through our platform, through Crowdfunder UK. And those match funds are predominantly what we call kind of always on funds. So they're open funds that are accessible all year round for the majority of our funding partners. So it can be a really good thing that works with their particular kind of fundraising timelines, as opposed to maybe missing a deadline because it doesn't quite work for when their project delivery might be or when their fundraising need is. So definitely something to consider when it comes to diversifying those income streams. And why is it important to make sure they've got a diverse kind of streams of income? Really, it's everything that's on this slide. So making sure that organisations can increase that financial stability, reduce that financial risk, increase and enhance the long-term sustainability as well. So making sure that an organisation has various different streams of income, so that if one dries up, it doesn't necessarily affect the whole organization and its ability to continue, its ability to deliver any projects or, any services which they are hoping to. By kind of crowdfunding, it's a great way to unlock potentially new opportunities. It could expand their reach and influence as well. So it's a great way to tap into a new audience beyond maybe existing memberships or existing corporate sponsorship. It can also help when it comes to being flexible and adaptive to the kind of the fundraising space, depending on what's going on locally, what's going on nationally. It's a great way to be able to kind of ebb and flow and flex and change your tactics depending on what's going on around you when it comes to what's available from grants and your traditional kind of bids that you might be putting in as an organization. So, for many of you here, you may be familiar with crowdfunding. It would be great if you wouldn't mind just popping into the chat box your kind of experience. So, do you have experience as a supporter? Have you supported a crowdfunding campaign? Have you ran a crowdfunding campaign? Do you have absolutely no kind of baseline knowledge, which is fine. We can go right back to basics. It'd be good to get an understanding, if you don't mind. Just pop something into the chat box as to your kind of experience in terms of using Crowdfunder or even just a similar platform. So crowdfunding as a whole. So actually going out to a network and a community and then raising money. So that could be on a digital platform similar to ours, but there's many out there. Got any coming through? Look. Fab. Thank you, Dan. Oh, and Dan's from British Ice Skating. Amazing. Hoping to raise money for rinks to be more accessible. Brilliant. That's the great thing to be thinking about crowdfunding for, actually, Dan, as well, because so much of the successful crowdfunding campaigns are those that really do have that kind of key community aspect. It's what we're all about, really, is that kind of reaching out to the community and anything which is increasing participation, making things more accessible, could be really great crowdfunding campaigns. So Dale, not personally, but did used to you have looked into it and you'll be passing info on to the wheelchair rugby clubs. Brilliant. That's really great as well. And Julie from Parkour UK, you've supported campaigns. Awesome. So you've got a bit of an understanding of what it's like from being a supporter, which is wonderful. And then we've got Hannah as well, British weightlifting, fab. Okay, so in terms of crowdfunding, then let's bring it right back to the basics. The principle of crowdfunding is essentially raising money from your crowd. So you can do that in many forms. We're obviously a digital fundraising platform, and there's lots of us out there. Some of them you'll be familiar with, I'm sure. And the idea is that you are reaching out to your community, to your crowd or your network of people around you in order to bring in pledges and bring in donations. In terms of Crowdfunder UK, there's a few kind of different USPs, so like unique selling points that we have. One of which is that we're a rewards-based crowdfunding platform. So what that means is that projects or organizations that are raising money have the ability, if they so wish, to offer what we call a reward. And that is a benefit of some kind in return for a financial contribution for their supporters. That isn't things like shares in a club or, any kind of investment. What that is going to be things like potentially merchandise, community days, team building, product services that are either delivered and by the organization themselves if they have capacity to. Alternatively, going out to the local business community and sourcing those rewards. So quite often that's a really great way for these clubs and organizations to go and have a conversation about their fundraising needs, just in the same way they might have done traditionally, kind of going around and asking for raffle prizes, which we see quite a lot, don't we, for in-person raffles. You'd flip that on its head, and rather than having an in-person raffle, you would list those kind of in-kind donations from businesses onto the crowdfunding page with a price point. So it might be a meal for two at the local restaurant. It could be a voucher for a high street shop. And that should be mutually beneficial. So it helps to incentivize people's giving, but it also helps that local business because they're getting some free promotion through the crowdfunding campaign and through the club or the organization. So it's all about that community collaboration wherever possible. So rewards can be incredibly varied. They can be all sorts of different things. The best thing for an organization to be thinking about is being creative with their rewards, understanding their audience. So things that will appeal to those that have already a kind of a shared interest in maybe the sport itself. So that might be existing members, and that could be things like discounted membership. That could also be aimed at the corporate kind of community around them. Could it be sponsorship of certain areas of the club, pitch side sponsorship for a discounted rate for the next 12 months, all those types of things. But then thinking creatively as well about I'm just thinking of a couple of examples. A really lovely one from a recent skate park that was raising money. They actually had a whole tagline based upon this one reward, which was buy us a pint. And it was buy us a pint of concrete. So for £5, people would buy the project a pint of concrete. So they didn't receive anything back tangibly from their £5, but it was a really lovely way to incentivize them to give a set amount of money. And actually that became kind of the whole hook for the campaign. There was a beer festival happening during the course of their crowdfunding campaign. So they got themselves there and everyone was buying them a pint at this beer festival. And it really helped to raise a huge amount of awareness and in turn, a huge amount of money towards getting the amount of concrete they needed to be able to get the skate park developed. So thinking creatively, thinking almost a little bit, tongue in cheek if they can, um, phrasing and wording things in a way that leaves a lasting memory with supporters as well can be really, really effective. Just want to go through a few numbers before we jump into the next section. So we've been around now for around 14 years. This will be the 14th year that Crowdfunder UK has been up and running. And within that time, projects coming through the platform have raised more than £369 million. We see around 300 projects added to the platform daily. And we've helped to distribute over £37.2 million of extra funding. So that's the match funding that I mentioned at the beginning of the session. We call it extra funding within the crowdfunder world. And essentially that is kind of additional funding to what you're hoping to raise from your crowd. So we work with a huge amount of partners across the UK, local authorities, all the way through to kind of sector specific funders like Sport England, who have got a really exciting fund at the moment with us. And we'll look in a bit more detail on those funds and how you can signpost people towards those funds as well in a moment. So in terms of the sports sector, over that time, we've seen more than kind of 7,000 projects come through the platform, and they've been supported by over 450,000 members of their community. And often these are grassroots organisations, they are small scale, volunteer led clubs and organisations looking to have positive impact within the physical activity space. So it's a really accessible way to raise potentially a good chunk of money and build that awareness around what they're doing as well. So from our sports partners specifically over that time, we've worked with, well, we are currently working with Sport England, Sport Northern Ireland and Sport Wales, and we've worked with British Cycling as well in the past. So we've been able to support them to distribute more than £11.3 million to those clubs and organisations. And collectively, those projects, so those sports projects, have raised more than £39.5 million. So it's a huge amount of money going back into kind of grassroots organisations across the country. Do feel free, guys, to interject at any point if you've got questions specific to what I'm talking about at the moment. I'll keep an eye on the chat box and the Q&A as well. So when people are looking to fundraise, they've obviously got their target in mind. So that financial goal that they need to hit in order to enhance the club or maybe run a course of project delivery. As you were saying, was it Dan with the British ice skating, with the ice skating rinks, they're hoping to make them more accessible, for example. So of course, the financial need is going to be the primary focus. One thing which is worth talking about when you're speaking with potential clubs is the additional benefits of crowdfunding. And that's something that you wouldn't necessarily get through more traditional forms of fundraising. So, for example, it's a great way to actually test the water and see if there is an appetite for what people are hoping to deliver, what they're raising the money for. So, it can be a brilliant way and a very low risk way to kind of put the story out there, put the idea out there. And if it gets supported by members of the community, you can pretty much tick that box and say, well, actually, yeah, people want this to happen. So you can use it as a way of building validation in your own idea and building confidence in the community about what you're going to deliver, essentially. Again, that helps to build awareness. So, launching a project can create a buzz around your idea and you can get noticed by a wider audience. That's some of the things that we task projects with, is actually trying to reach outside of their core networks. How do you build that network? How do you actually reach an audience that you're not talking to on a daily basis? And we've got lots of resources and support to help people do that. Everybody that donates to a crowdfunding campaign or shares that campaign or offers a reward will organically become an advocate. So we are advocates for projects here at Crowdfunder. We'll talk about them in our company meetings. We might invite them onto a webinar to talk about their experience. And we will, if something resonates with us, we may well buy a reward ourselves. We're very much invested in the success of the projects we support. And that is true of all members of the community that actually support these projects. It can help to create an engaged audience and it can help to build some meaningful connections as well. What we've seen specifically within this sector is things like, local trade shops, for example, might come forward and say, well, actually, we're unable to support you financially, but we've got an ex-display kitchen and we noticed you were raising money to refit the clubhouse. So we'd love to gift it to you. Or we've got some time we can volunteer in terms of labour to help you fit it. So these are conversations that wouldn't necessarily come about without fundraising in this very kind of public facing, very transparent and supporter focused way. When we're doing lots of this fundraising behind closed doors, those conversations simply just don't happen. So although it can be daunting, the knock-on effect of actually putting a campaign page out there and promoting it effectively can lead to some really lovely connections going forward. Um, project owners, I should say, and organizations, no doubt will learn some new skills. Like I say, it might be a little bit daunting initially, but there's lots of help and resources that we offer so that they can learn these new skills, some of which are really transferable as well. And they will find that they can kind of put those into day-to-day club or organization life. We do find, especially within the sports and physical activity sector, that people do come back time and time again. Once they've done this and they've done it successfully, they then come back and use the platform for things like running a prize draw or another crowdfunding campaign further down the line. And then, of course, there's the match funding, so the extra funding that we offer from our national and regional partners. So that's a really big benefit, I would say, to crowdfunding. If you're an eligible project, it can be a really big boost to your campaign to have support from our partners. And I should mention at this point that actually you don't have to choose just one fund. You can actually apply for anything that our system matches you with, and we'll talk about how that happens in a moment. But you can receive multiple pledges from our partners towards a project. So that can be an incredible way to increase the amount of money that these projects are raising. Okay, so how does it work then? So some of you have supported a project, so you've come along as a supporter and made a donation, which is fabulous. In terms of the other side, so being a project owner, what they would need to do as a club or as an organisation is they need to sign up to crowdfunder.co.uk, which is a free to access account. They would then create a unique page. So on that campaign page, they're going to be telling the story of the organisation. They're going to explain their idea. So what is the fundraising need? They'd need to set a target. We always recommend that is the minimum that they need to make this idea happen because they can always overfund it. So that's the key as well. If you know that you actually need £10,000 to deliver this project, but £15,000 would mean you could market it for the next 6 months and it would be incredible. You could have a £10,000 target, absolutely. And then you can always overfund and continue fundraising until you've kind of reached that 15,000 or beyond. So there's lots of things within the power of the project owner to kind of play around with and change. And then they also can decide how long they would need to run a project in order to reach that target. So they are very much in control of the fundraising themselves. There's no set timelines necessarily for them to work to, so it should fit nicely within a fundraising calendar and for the fundraising need of that organization. They will also receive the money that they raise from their crowd within around 5 to 7 working days when the project closes. So again, a really accessible way to actually access money that they're raising. There's no kind of waiting for months on end to one see if you've been approved, and then it might be, drawing down funds could take longer than that again. So if they have a fairly short time frame for a fundraising need, then this is definitely something to consider. They would then go on to add any rewards that they might think that they would like to offer on their page, as well as applying for any of the extra funding that they've been matched with. And that's something that we always advise people to do in their draft of their page. So before they go live, and this just means they've got all of their ducks in a row before they go live with their project. And it can become a really exciting message to actually promote their project, to say, we've been supported by Sport England as well as our local authority, whoever might be backing them. That becomes, again, a great thing to shout about to incentivize people to support them. Sport England are behind them. It's definitely credible. Let's make sure that we support them as well and get this happening. And then they would go on to launch their project. So it would go live on our platform. Again, they're in complete control of when that happens. And it would be up to them as project owners to promote that page within their networks, within their core audience to begin with. And then they would start pushing that out to a wider audience. So thinking about social media, the business community, schools, colleges, different institutions around them, helping them to broaden their reach. Yes, Julie, did you have a
Hi.
question?
Sorry. So when you're saying about applying for the extra funding in the draft stage, so you've got your page set up, ready to go. You can still apply at that time, the extra funding, and then hear back before you launch it. Is that what you mean?
Absolutely, yeah. So part of setting up your page, there's a whole section on extra funding, and it's a tick box exercise. So it's asking you about the demographic of the community that you'll be working with, your potential kind of project outcomes, and you would choose any of those that are applicable to your project. You would have already told us in the kind of earlier stage of setting up that project page whereabouts in the country you are and your organizational structure, whether you're a social enterprise, charity, limited company, a group of volunteers. So with that information, our computer system, so our software, would match that project with any of the extra funders that it thinks might be applicable for that particular project. And at that point, the project owner can apply for any of those funds. And it's a really stripped back, simple application process because a lot of the information is already held within what they're already inputting. I'd say around 10 to 15 minutes per application, which is pretty swift, really, compared to some of the ones I know that I've been a part of writing funding bids. And yeah, some of them have taken me days, I'm not going to lie, to actually
That
like
sounds
collate
great.
all of that information. And yes, you can hear back before you go live. And that's something I would always advise projects as well, is allow enough planning time to actually factor in those things before they have that go live date, because actually it's really good to know if you're going to receive that funding or not before you go live. It just gives you kind of that boost and that ability to promote it and say, we're going to receive X amount of money from Sport England when we hit the relevant milestone, or every pound we raise is going to be matched by our local authority. Those are messages that you want to know at the beginning so that you can go out to your audience with that. But yes, you can do it all in the draft kind of stages.
Great, thank you.
Okay. What we'll do, I think now, just for a few moments, is it would be great to get an understanding of projects that are around you, either locally or within your specific sectors, your specific sports or physical activity. So what I'll do now is just quickly pause the recording and I will put a link to our Explore page into the chat box. If you wouldn't mind clicking on that, and I'll talk you through how you can then look for specific projects. So you can filter by category. You can also filter by location. I would recommend having a look at, rather than all projects, I'd look at successful projects and see which ones resonate with you as a potential supporter. And then we'll have a little bit of discussion when we come back. So I'll just stop the recording for a moment. Brilliant, thank you. So we talked a little bit about extra funding there, didn't we? So in terms of the extra funding, this is what I mentioned earlier, Julie, when you were asking about, do you apply for that in draft? So as part of the setting up process of that page, there is a section on extra funding, and that will flag any funders and any partners that the Crowdfunder software thinks that a project could be eligible for. You can see here that it's brought up the movement fund, and that would be based on the information that this particular project has inputted. There may well be the movement fund and a local authority and another national organisation. So it's always worth recommending to different clubs or organisations that they look at the different criteria for each of the funds that they've been matched with and do put in an application for any of those that they think would be a good fit for them. Worst case, they get a decline from a particular fund. Best case, they get an approval from more than one fund and they're receiving, pledges from different pots of money, which is a really great problem to have, to be honest. It might mean that they have to rethink their target, so they're not fully funded by these funding pots, and they have to crowdfund a little bit more than they'd, initially anticipated, because actually otherwise they're not crowdfunding at all, and these two organisations would be fully funding them. So, it's, as I say, it's a great problem to have. It's a way as well that these project owners can have access to the funding partners. So there's lots of communication that goes on. If a partner needs any more information about a particular organisation or a project, they will reach out to them directly and ask for that. So as soon as those applications are in, those lines of communication get opened up. It's very much an accessible and personable way to be applying for funds. Our funding partners are people. The applications are moderated by people, and they will communicate with projects as well. So yeah, it's never just a kind of put an application in and never hear back from somebody if you're not successful, that kind of situation. It's very much if you want feedback, you can have feedback. If you need to give more information, they will ask for it. Even even if you've been declined, you could potentially kind of come back and say, well, actually, we don't think we should have been declined because of X, Y, and Z, and you can open up that conversation with them. So in particular, let's take a look at the Movement Fund. So this was launched last July with Sport England. Before that, we were distributing the Active Together and the Places and Spaces Fund with Sport England as well. The Movement Fund is all about getting more people active in the communities. So they have particular demographics and sections of the community which are high priority. So things like women and girls, LGBTQ community, the elderly, the less able-bodied, for example, all of which is outlined on the eligibility criteria on the fund. I have put a link to that in the chat box for you. But ultimately, this fund is aimed at how are clubs and organisations increasing participation in what they're doing? How are they going to get more of these groups active within their communities? It's not so much a business as usual kind of funding grant. It is very much if we spend X amount of money, we are going to bring more of our community into participating in what we do, or we're looking at delivering a new kind of subsection of what we're doing, specifically aimed at this area of the community where we've noticed that there's little to no participation and we want to involve them in what they're doing. There are two ways to access the fund. One is to go directly to Sport England. The other is to come through Crowdfunder. The majority of people that are applying directly through Sport England are being kind of encouraged to then go on to crowdfund, and then they'll receive a pledge towards their project. I would always recommend, if I'm completely transparent, that they come through Crowdfunder, because not only will they receive that kind of package of support that we offer once they're in our world, but also, even if they're not eligible for the movement fund, they may be eligible for a different fund through us. And even if they're not eligible at all for any match funds, they could still crowdfund successfully. And that would have all of those benefits that we talked about at the beginning. So I would look at it as an add-on to their fundraising need, as opposed to solely reliant on an extra funding grant. It's a great boost, and it's definitely a way to kind of bring them into the world of crowdfunding. But ultimately, raising the money in this way can have a lot of great benefits as well, even if for whatever reason they might not hit the mark in terms of a specific fund. Just to bring your attention as well to, this is a bit of a selection of some of the partners that we've been working with. Check out the extra funding page to see all of the current live funds, and they do change. We are always reaching out to kind of bring new funding partners on board as well. Okay, so that was a whistle-stop tour of extra funding. What I would like to do now is, again, just a couple of minutes, maybe put yourselves in the shoes of a potential project owner, or maybe think like Dan, maybe think about, the ice rinks, and knowing that there's a specific need there. Have a little look at our extra funding page and see what might be available around your sector, around your sport or physical activity. Alternatively, you as an individual, what is there around you kind of in your location? And we can have a little talk through what you found in just a moment. Okay, amazing. So this question comes up a lot. So why would people pledge on a crowdfunding campaign? Why are they going to part with their hard-earned money to support a community sports project or club organization? And with any crowdfunder, it comes down to two key things, really. First of all, they believe in the idea, and that might be because they are you, as people signposting and supporting these projects. It will be the project owners, it will be the project owners' friends, family, fellow volunteers, beneficiaries of the project, members. They believe in the idea itself, and they can see its benefit, and they want to see it happen. And then there will be a group of people who are slightly more removed from the project itself. They're not going to be the direct beneficiaries. They might not necessarily know anyone or be somebody that partakes in the sport or physical activity, but they can understand why it's impactful. But ultimately, for them, they want to get their hands on that reward, because those rewards are going to be listed at a lower price point than you would get them on the high street. They're going to be super creative and exciting and offer something to the community, which will be things that they can't necessarily always buy. So things like experiences, community days, parties, events, all those kinds of things that make people feel special. Also, maybe luxury items in there. And then we've also had things like what some people would consider essential. So, discounted haircuts and accounting services and MOTs offered by the local garage, which are all things that actually, if I, as a supporter, know that my MOT is coming up and I've seen it on your crowdfunding page for £10 less than I'd be paying in the garage, I'm probably going to get it through the crowdfunding campaign. So it's that kind of, incentivizing. And there will be people that, as I say, are a little bit more removed from the project itself and the impact, but they have stumbled upon the page through it's being promoted in the local newspaper, or it was promoted on the local radio or in the Facebook group, and they've looked through and they've seen a whole host of rewards that actually are incentivizing them to give. So it's striking that balance between those two groups is key when it comes to promotion and messaging. One way of being really effective with promoting a campaign is to really understand the community and the audience. And a great way to do that is to develop something we call a network map. And this can be something that you can really kind of encourage those projects to be doing in the early stages of their planning. So to break up the community, which can seem really overwhelming as a whole, into quite bite-sized chunks. So you can see here within this network map, we'd be looking at grouping friends and family together. We'd be looking at then kind of sports clubs and organisations around us. So that's going to be like-minded people kind of professionally. You'd be thinking about existing members, maybe even the schools and the colleges. Maybe they can do some fundraising on behalf of the project. You've got Facebook and social media, and then things like press, blogs, vlogs, even, influencers, and of course partners. And um, that could be when it comes to, stock. If you've got a bar, that could be partners. So you've got suppliers, you've got venues, you've got all sorts of people that these clubs and organizations work with at that professional level that would become a network in itself. And the key is looking at each of these groups and understanding, firstly, who's in them, and secondly, the best way to contact them. So, for example, friends and family, you might have a conversation or pick up the phone or, send a WhatsApp message. For the schools and the colleges, that could be an email to the PTA, that could be going in person and speaking to the relevant people. Keeping each of the areas of communication personable as much as possible, understanding kind of who that key contact is and making sure that they're actually approaching these people from a place that resonates with them as well. So what is it about the campaign which is going to land best with this group of people? Is it that there's these great rewards? Is it that the impact is going to directly benefit them? Is it that actually them fundraising on behalf of the club is going to be a really exciting day for them to get involved with, i.e., the schools? So thinking about those different ways is really key. Avoiding just sending out a blanket email, avoiding just shouting from the rooftops about your crowdfunding campaign, ultimately making it as personable as possible for each group. And everyone can help to do that. So always encourage when possible people to have a team around them, whether that's fellow volunteers or friends and family. It could be members that are getting involved as well. Think about building the community. So having people that are out there trying to, source those rewards, who's going to be offering rewards, who can make donations, who can share the project to the relevant networks, and is there somebody out there in the community that can be a real champion and a real advocate and be the person which is shouting louder than everybody else on social media or at the network meetings? That person, every community has them, that larger than life character that can really take this and run with it out in the kind of in the real world whilst this is going on. And then behind the scenes, that team of people to help build the campaign. So you might have somebody who's great with video content or taking photographs or design, helping you put the page together or helping clubs put the page together. Somebody who's great at telling a story to help write the page and create the content for any promotion. Somebody who's brilliant at social media is always helpful, even if that means tapping up a younger member. We've had people at bowls clubs in their 80s that have managed to do social media because they've brought in a niece or a nephew or a grandkid to help them along the way. So no excuses. And then networking as well. Somebody that again is happy speaking in front of a crowd, happy being at those events and going and talking to everyone. So what can you be doing in order to support that? So you can be signposting people to the relevant content and resources that we have. You can be kind of building your knowledge. You can be imparting your knowledge as well, understanding the process of crowdfunding, as Hannah was saying, understanding what's on the extra funding page, making sure that you're kind of signposting people in the right direction. And then do you offer any grant funding or match funding yourselves? Is there a way you could amplify that by distributing it through a crowdfunding campaign? We know that match funds, the return for the organisation versus pure grants is massive because the crowd are actually then, amplifying that as well. And then in terms of support, it's about being that kind of mentor and understanding that yes, it's a lot of work. Yes, there can be slow patches within a crowdfunding campaign. It generally does pick back up again. It's all about kind of keeping that momentum, not being swayed if it's, has a little bit of a dip, and making sure that they know of the support that is available for them as well, which we'll share with all of you. And we have more sessions on kind of the ins and outs of a live crowdfunding campaign so you guys can feel really confident in what you're saying to people as well. And then if you have capacity, sharing their projects with your networks. What we don't want you to do, or what we recommend that you don't do, is create a project page for them. They know more than anybody about their particular club and organisation. Unless you're personally involved with it, let them actually do the storytelling, because it's going to come from a place of passion, and it's going to come from a place of showing their personality as well as project owners. Don't do all of the marketing for them. It's very much in their own hands for them to promote, but of course you can reshare things. Whatever you do, don't promise that they'll get funded. It is one of those situations where it's all about how much you put in will kind of yield how much you get out of it. You can give them hints and tips on how to promote and how to kind of encourage them to reach their target or to make sure that they secure that extra funding, but do not take responsibility for them being funded or not. It's very much up to the project owners when it comes to their campaigns. Yep, so that's that next point of not accepting responsibility for it not getting funded. You are kind of a mentor and a guide. You're not responsible for the success or failure of a project. And then in terms of the actual campaign delivery post funding, unless again you've got that personal involvement with it, it should all fall very much to the organisations and the clubs, so the project owners, to actually deliver that project post funding as well. But there's loads of support available to help projects to do this successfully. So the best thing to be doing is encouraging them to engage with our package of support. So we have lots of different webinars. We have a knowledge hub, which is full of different information and guides to help them. We have a real live team of people in our customer support team who are actually responsible for writing the help centre as well. So they are fountains of knowledge. Help centre is the best place to go to for any technical questions to be answered. And if they can't find the advice then they can contact support. They've got a live project dashboard that they can manage every aspect of their campaign, complete control of what they're doing. And we also have a couple of new events coming up as well, which I'll share with you. So things like Ask the Expert, they can come and speak to a member of Crowdfunder and ask any questions. And we're going to be doing some sessions where they can actually build along live with us. So we can help them to curate their page. We can help them to create that network map. So lots of really interactive support that we're going to offer these projects to make sure that they are successful. That does bring us to the end of the session in terms of content. I would love to answer any questions if anybody has anything they'd like to ask off the back of that whirlwind tour of crowdfunding for you. Lawrence, did you have a question at all?
No, no, not from me. It's
Okay,
yeah, it's very good, very good, very interesting.
thank
I
you.
think my experience, perhaps the club didn't quite go about it the right way. I think they,
Well, the nice thing is, it's not kind of a do it once and never do it again. It's a do it once, learn from it, come back again, and try again. And it might be that the club can reflect on what happened last time and kind of learn from that and think, okay, well, this time let's concentrate on putting more time maybe into the planning side of things and knowing that how we can be reactive while the campaign is live, because that's sometimes oh, I know. One thing that comes up a lot is how long should we run a campaign for? That's always a good question. And ultimately, it's up to the organisation or the club, so the project owners, as to how long they need to run it for. Saying that, what's useful is understanding how they're going to maintain momentum of a live campaign for the
Mm,
duration that they want to run it for. Because what can sometimes happen is when a project launches, because they've done their homework and they've started warming up their crowd and
mm,
saying that this project's going to be launching soon, people can get excited and donate to it in the first couple of days, and then it might dip off a little bit after the first week, and it will generally pick up towards the end naturally because people feel the urgency with the deadline that they now need to donate because the messaging is there, that they obviously the deadline's coming and they need to raise the money. And the key is, how do you keep the momentum going when there's that natural potential lull in the middle? And the way that
Mm.
people do that is, chances are, if they've been approved for extra funding, especially from the movement fund, it will kick in around that time. So shout about that.
Mm.
Add some more rewards, maybe, put some really people-focused social media posts out there or some content generally. But all of that can be planned in the planning stages before you even go live. So
Mm.
having all of that ready to go, so you're not, trying to think on your feet in the moment, can be really, really useful. But in terms
Mm.
of kind of your support from your side of things, it would be a case of understanding that and going, okay, well, maybe you could add that reward that you've held on to, or maybe now would be a great time to post an update to your page, or to think about going back to the local radio station and seeing if they can do another shout out for you. So kind of understanding the peaks and troughs of a campaign and how you might be able to signpost people, and ultimately sending them back to us if there's any queries, we can advise them.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at and it appears that the thing is still open.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that they won't have drawn any of that money down.
What's the oh, hang on, I'm just going to put this link quickly into the chat box while I've got you all here, which is
Sorry.
the sports crowdfunding hub, where this is a kind of a
Mm.
one-stop shop for everything sports crowdfunding. So it's definitely worth sending people here as well. Um, if you don't mind putting the link in the chat box, I can have a little look and see.
Give me 2 seconds.
No worries.
It was attached to it was obviously attached to a Sport England. Oh, now I'm trying to get back onto the page. I can't.
We've had a question come in about sharing resources and kind of a step by step on how to successfully run a campaign. Absolutely. What I will do after this session is make sure I send around a follow-up email, which will be the recording of this and also the resources that I've talked about. Not only that, but we have lots of different events coming up. So we run a monthly webinar with Sport England where we talk through the Movement Fund and how to
Mm.
successfully crowdfund. So I would encourage you to send everybody there, and to things like our Ask the Expert sessions where we can kind of answer their questions in real time as well. Um, Oh, thanks, Lawrence. Let's have a look. Oh, let me stop. Let's stop sharing, shall I? So I'm not sharing the entire page. Right, let's have a little
Well, there
look.
might be people who want to donate.
Okay, so what this is, in fact, that's a really good shout. I'm going to
Mm.
share it because I'm going to clarify then. They are still accepting donations, sorry. So what this means here, can you see this kind of
Yeah.
infinity loop? That means
Mm.
that this project is something called always on. So it
Right.
means that the project itself has ended. However, they have the ability to still collect donations, but their actual kind of project itself would have had a
Right. Yeah.
time frame, and that's been and gone. But
Yeah.
now they're able to have any
Because
donations.
this was allied to a movement fund bid, and obviously raising 6,000 was the prerequisite
Right.
to get the 6,000 from the movement fund. So
I
they
see.
have they have moved into a new facility. So
Okay.
it's all.
Okay, amazing. So yeah, that's really interesting. But that if you see a project with this infinity loop, it means that their actual kind of timing of their project has ended, but they are now what we call always on. So forevermore, they'll be able to accept donations on this page. Okay, right. Do we have any further questions before I wrap it up for today? And make sure that I send all of those resources over. And by all means, please, even as kind of people who might not be planning on running a campaign but just want to learn a little bit more, you can come along and hear myself and the Sport England team discussing the fund. So you've got a clearer idea of the types of things that would be supported. And we've got all of those Ask the Expert sessions and things coming up. So if you've got a particular organisation or club that you know are looking to do this, by all means, come along and ask questions with them on their behalf, kind of upskill yourselves as well. And I'd be more than happy to spend some time with you all and just making sure you all feel confident to signpost those clubs towards raising money in this way. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Julie, for your comments. And it's been lovely having you all here as well. Thank you for spending your lunchtime with me. and wish yourselves and any projects that you support all of the best of luck as well. Let me just share my last slide with you, which has got a little bit of information on how to get in touch with us. And I will say my goodbyes. So thank you, everybody, and hopefully hear from you all soon.
Thank you.
Very much. Cheers.